Hello, time for another Man in Great book review. And today I'm going to start another series of holiday themed book reviews. Some people love to read books with a Christmas theme, and so once a week from now until Christmas, I'm going to be reviewing a book that has something to do with Christmas. And today's book is probably next to the Gospels, the most famous Christmas story of all. It's A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, which was originally published in 1843. This version by Penguin Books was published in 2014. It's 200 pages, and it contains the original illustrations by John Leech, a cartoonist for Punch magazine. And I'll show you a couple of them to get started. The first one is Mr. Fezziwig, Scrooge's first boss, at his Christmas party. And then we have an illustration, one of the more famous ones that Leech did in this book, of the Ghost of Christmas Present. Before I talk about the book itself, a little bit of background about A Christmas Carol. 1843 saw Charles Dickens in some financial straits. He had just finished his latest novel, a book called Martin Chuzzlewit, which was largely set in the United States, and which turned out to be a big flop. Even today, it's his Dickens' least popular and least read novel. And the sales were very disappointing. On top of that, Dickens had 4 children to support, and his wife became pregnant with their 5th child. He was being paid an annual or a monthly salary by his publisher, but the sales of Martin Chuzzlewit were so disappointing that his publishers threatened to reduce his income, and so Dickens decided to write something very quickly to make money. So Christmas Story was essentially hack work that he did to make money. He wanted to write a Christmas story that would sell quickly during the Christmas season. And he wrote this story remarkably quickly. It only took him less than 6 weeks to write. He got the ideas for A Christmas Carol while walking at night around the streets of London. Dickens was known for his incredibly lengthy walks, sometimes 20 miles or more. And so while he was walking around the streets of London at night, he was generating the ideas for this story. Then he would come home and write. And so he wrote the whole thing in less than 6 weeks. And when it was published, it was an instant success. It sold out of its first print run in less than 2 weeks. However, it turns out that Dickens didn't make very much money off of it because he insisted on publishing a deluxe edition of the book with colored in papers and gilt edges and expensive binding. And as a result, the book was rather expensive. It was something like close to $40 in today's money. So even though the book sold out, it cost so much to produce that it didn't make a lot of money. And so Dickens was quite disappointed that it wasn't the financial bonanza he hoped it would be. However, later on, Dickens did find a way to make a lot of money off of Christmas Carol, and that was by giving dramatic readings of the story. These proved sensational. Dickens was an excellent amateur actor, and he wound up reading A Christmas Carol publicly 128 times during his lifetime. Now, one of the reasons The Christmas Carol was so successful was that it combined 2 things that the early Victorians were really interested in: ghost stories and Christmas. In fact, the original title of A Christmas Carol is A Christmas Carol in Prose, a Ghost Story of Christmas. And of course, you've got the ghost of Jacob Marley and the 3 Christmas ghosts coming together. So there's ghost stories, but there's also descriptions of Christmas carols and getting together and eating Christmas feasts and everything. And this was something that was becoming popular in early Victorian times. It's in this period, in the 1840s and 1850s, that we began to see the beginnings of a split between Christmas being a purely religious holiday where you went to Mass or church and thought about the birth of Christ, and the primarily secular holiday that we have today with Christmas trees and presents and singing Christmas carols and having big family dinners and so forth. All that was beginning in this time period, and this book really kind of captures that flavor. Now, of course, I don't really have to explain the plot of A Christmas Carol because almost everyone's familiar with it. Most people are familiar with The Christmas Carol, not from the book. A lot of people haven't read this book, but they know it from the countless television and movie adaptations. Probably no other Victorian-era book has been filmed as many times as A Christmas Carol has. People never seem to get tired of it. One of the things you will notice if you actually read this book and compare it to the various adaptations is Scrooge is never really portrayed as evil. He's simply portrayed as someone who's selfish and greedy. He's a miser, but he's not. He complains about having to give Bob Cratchit the day off for Christmas, but he does give him the day off because he knows you're supposed to do that. If he was truly evil, he would have forced him to work during Christmas. Uh, and he does pay him. He does get a paid day off for Christmas. And again, Scrooge complains about this, but he does do it. So he's not really an evil man. He's just kind of an embittered, lonely man who takes pleasure in money rather than in human connections. And it's really only in the first chapter. There's 5 chapters in the book, which are called staves. It's really only in the first chapter that he's this way. The bulk of A Christmas Carol is Scrooge coming to realize what a terrible life he's led and repenting. So this book is really a book about repentance and making up for the bad things you've done in your life. So it's again, I think that's part of the appeal of it too, is because at the Christmas season, there's a feeling that you need to start the new year right and start to make up for bad things you've done. And so it's a common feeling, and that's kind of expressed in the book. So if you've never read Christmas Carol, I think you'll really enjoy it. It's certainly much shorter than most of Dickens' novels. Of course, Dickens wrote novels to be published in magazines in serial format. And so the longer he made the books, the more money he made, which is why most of his novels are 800, 900, or even 1,000 pages long. But this one, of course, is only about 200 pages because it was published in book form and not serialized in magazines. So if you're looking for a classic Christmas story, you can't get any more classic than A Christmas Carol. It's full of wonderful characters. And of course, even if you're familiar with the countless movie versions, you'll still find something new. There's some really wonderful descriptions of food in here. The sumptuous Christmas meals that were held and talked about in here. And it's just a really, really fun book to read, and it's one that you can read quite quickly to put you in the Christmas spirit. The book is A Christmas Carol. The author is Charles Dickens. This has been another Man and Gray book review. Thanks for watching.